Welcome guys to the beginning of Unit 3. Today is all about lines and angles and a bunch of vocabulary that is just going to be front loaded so that as we enter this unit you are as prepared as possible. Now the cool thing about today is that you've seen a lot of these words before. We're going to talk about parallel, perpendicular, and then we're going to talk about some things you haven't seen before like transversals. Before I begin, I want you to understand that if at any point you need to copy a definition or you want more time to work on something, that you should simply pause the video and stop it instead of continuing to let me talk. Okay? All good? Then here we go. The foldable that you picked up today is orange. Looks something like this one right here, and what I would do is start by folding on the dotted line, which obviously you don't have, but you're smart enough to know that these words are going to go on the front, and take some time now to cut on all of these lines so that they're separated, or if you'd rather do that at the end, that's fine too. Again, I mentioned that today's topic is lines and angles, and so all the notes for today are on that foldable. And our focus for today is how can we identify different lines and different angles in 2D and 3D spaces. Alright, so you see a cube like this inside of your foldable next to the word parallel lines, and you're probably thinking, oh, parallel, it means same slope, and you are absolutely correct. But we're going to go with a nice specific definitions. Parallel lines are lines that lie in the same plane and do not intersect. What that means for us, and let me grab my handy dandy highlighter, is that line BC and line AD are parallel because they lie in the same plane, that plane being plane BAD or BADC, however you want to name it, and they'll never touch. Some other options you have are maybe line DF and CE. And there are just a bunch of options that you have for parallel lines. One really cool thing that you haven't seen before is parallel planes. Parallel planes are the same idea, except for that instead of lines, they're just planes that do not intersect. Meaning in our case, that plane BADC, as I mentioned earlier, is parallel to plane HGFE. Is that enough colors for one picture? And I do recommend that as we're doing these notes, you've got markers at your table and you are coloring that cube inside of your foldable. The next thing we're going to talk about is perpendicular lines. And if you're just saying the word intersect, we have to be a little more specific. Perpendicular lines intersect to form right angles. What that means for us is that if I'm looking at, let's say, line AG, and I'm going to pause for a second because I realize that I keep calling these lines, and you're probably thinking, but miss, it's a box. Okay, it looks like a box, but planes and lines are infinite and they go on forever. So even though these planes seem to stop, you could actually draw them with arrows because they keep on going. So when you see a test and you see the cube, I really need to emphasize that those planes and lines are continuous. It's not just secluded to the figure that you see. Going back to what I was saying though, AG needs to make a right angle with the line that it's perpendicular. So what line do you think is perpendicular to AG? Did you say GF? Because I do believe that makes a right angle. Or you could have said that AG is perpendicular to ED. AD, excuse me. Alright, so some other options we have, or as if I start again, let's maybe take this purpley pink color. If we look at BC, line BC, it would be perpendicular to both BH, see that right angle, that 90 degrees angle, and it would be perpendicular to, oh, let's say CE. Alright, and wait, there's more. We do have perpendicular planes, and although it's difficult to tell, these planes would also intersect at right angles. And planes like that, if I was going to color it beautifully, and you like orange? How you feeling about orange? Let's say that this whole big plane, actually, let's back that train up. Let's do plane BCHE. Do you see it in the background? It would be perpendicular to maybe plane HGEF, or the plane on top, BADC. Alright, so those are some notes. As I'm mentioning those planes, I would definitely be writing it down. We've talked about parallel, we've talked about perpendicular, but now we need to talk about skew. And no, we're not talking about skewers that you're going to find at dinner. We're talking about skew lines, a concept that's entirely different, okay? Skew lines are not coplanar. Skew lines are not coplanar. Now, coplanar, for those of you who have forgotten, means do not lie in the same plane. Not in the same plane. Alright, do not lie in the same plane. So, for example, we would say that line AG is skew to line BC. Alright? Those lines are not perpendicular because they do not lie in the same plane. Perpendicular would be if we moved this to BH. Those two lines do directly form a right angle, as you can see right there. But unfortunately, if we move this forward, those two lines are not in the same plane. We would have a similar scenario if we took, let's say, BA and DF. Alright? Those two lines are not in the same plane. Although they'll never touch, the part of that problem is because, again, they are not in the same plane. It would have to be moved here, where we would see that right angle is here. Now, I am emphasizing the next point. It is very important. Do you see this line and this line? So I'm talking about line BA and EF. What do you think would be true about those two green lines? Okay, well, before I answer that question, let me show you this. And I would like a darker color, so let's go with maybe black. Did I just create a plane? Those two lines, although they look skew, are actually still parallel because they can have a plane created. Now I know, mind blown, I just created a plane. Alright, so you've got to be very careful, specifically when we're talking about looking at diagonals. And you'll see some examples like that on the back of your foldable, which I suggest you go ahead and pause right now this video and try these examples here. When you've done them, raise your hand. Myself or Miss Chang would be more than happy to come around and check out what you've got going on and see how you're doing. So pause the video. No, really. Press pause. Please? Okay, good. Welcome back. Now we're going to totally change directions, and so the next big vocabulary word is the word transversal. Now the transversal refers to this yellow line right here. It is a line that intersects two coplanar lines at two different points. Alright, so this yellow line intersects these two black lines here and here. Alright, so this yellow line intersects these two lines at two different points. Okay, it just means intersects two lines that are in the same plane. Alright, transversals make very special angles. This is huge. The Candyland lady is yelling at you because you have got to understand what a transversal is. So here's your yellow transversal, and now let's explore what it does. Alright, there are lots of options with transversals. One of those options is called a corresponding angle. Alright, a corresponding angle is a pair of angles that lie on the same side of the transversal and on the same side of two lines. Alright, so what I like to do is first identify my transversal. So here it is, it's beautiful and yellow. It says that we need to be on the same side of the transversal. So we're either going to be on the left or on the right. Both of those angles would be on the same side. And then it says same side of the other two lines. Alright, so what that means for us is from the transversal, here's the left and here's the right. And on these two lines, which I'm going to go ahead and color code for my benefit. So we've got this blue line and we've got this green line. And each of those lines have a top and a bottom. It has a top and a bottom. Now I realize that that's a lot of variables, so you don't have to write all of that every time. This is just for the initial explanation. So it needs to be on the same side. So let's say we pick the left, and then it needs to be, same side of the transversal, and then it needs to be on the same side of the other two lines. So if I pick top left, it would have to be angle 1 and angle 5. Both of those angles are on the top left of my picture. If I was going to do it again, let's say I wanted to be on the bottom right, it would be here, and it would be 4 and 8. Alright, those are corresponding. And if you're lucky enough when you're dealing with corresponding, you'll notice that they usually make a C, and that's kind of difficult to notice what I just did. So let's use a crayon. Let's use this red crayon, which is still a little difficult to see. But notice that if I draw and connect those angles, it kind of looks like a C. Alright, you'd have backward C's, forward C's, all's well. Okay, so the next big vocabulary word is alternate interior angles. Alternate means opposite sides. Alright, so if I label my picture again, and I have my left, my right, top, bottom, we need to be on the opposite sides of the transversal. So one of my angles is on the left, and one of my angles is on the right, and it's going to be between the blue and the green because it's on the inside. So for us, that means we could have angle 3 and angle 6, or we could have angle 5 and 4. So those are our options for alternate interior. Opposite sides of the yellow and on the inside of the blue and green line. For alternate exterior, it is almost the exact same concept, so I'm going to kind of skip the definition exactly. You can write it down if you pause the video. But from our blue and our green line, we need to be on opposite sides of the yellow and on the outside. So we could be top left, and then we would need to be right all the way at the bottom. Notice we're not between the blue and green lines as I've color coordinated them. Alright, so if I labeled everything, we would be on the left and the top and the right at the very bottom. Alright, another option we would have is if we did 2 and 7, not inside the black and on opposite sides. The last one is the easiest to remember. Your foldable says same side interior and in parentheses consecutive. It's exactly what it means. So again, I'm going to kind of skip over the definition, but here's my yellow transversal, transversal meaning a line that cuts, or two lines that are coplanar, that intersects two lines that are coplanar. For those of you who like the variables, we have the left, the right, top, bottom, and this means that we need to be, what color did I start with? Pink. That we need to be inside because it said interior, so if I pick 3 and on the same side, then it needs to be 5. So we're going to be between the blue and green lines, both angles on the left or both angles on the right. Now there are lots of options. So if you look at the back of your foldable, you see a picture like this, and it says name some interior or alternate interior angles, alternate exterior angles. It tells you to do lots of things. So take some time right now, pause the video, try that back side, it's example 2, and then have me come over and check it, and I'll give you a stamp or a thumbs up or a sticker. Maybe if you're lucky you'll get a Twizzler, and then we'll move on. Really guys, just pause the video. Thank you. Now the last thing is example 3 on the back of your foldable. So this should be what you see on the back. And for each angle pair, we're going to name the transversal and we're going to name the angle pair. Now for us, what that means is I'm going to start with yellow and I'm going to look at angle 2 and I'm going to look at angle 7. The very first thing I'm going to do is physically use my hand. Now you can't see me putting my hand on the screen, so look, here's my hand, and I'm going to cover up the angles that we're not even talking about. So I'm going to notice, and this one's going to be a little different because I'm going to stick with just using one color. I'm going to notice that when I'm looking at this line and this line, our transversal is B. Line B is cutting these two angles. So I'm going to write the transversal is B. That's for example, or this first example, angle 2 and 7. And then I'm going to look. So we talk about the left and right side of the transversal. Top, bottom, top, bottom. So if we're on opposite sides and on the inside, what do we call that? Yeah, alternate interior angles. Alright, so that wasn't too terrible. If you don't understand, feel free to raise your hand or talk to the people at your table and get them to explain it. Let's try the next one. Alright, the next one tells me, and again, I'm going to start off by identifying my angles. To look at angle 8 and angle, oh, well I can't see angle 12, so let's move my hand up here where we know we're not working, and angle 12. Then I'm going to go ahead and identify that, okay, well here are two lines, so my transversal must be C. My transversal must be C. So we have the left and right side, or you could label that differently now, of the transversal. And we have top, bottom, top, bottom. Doesn't really matter exactly how you label it as long as you're consistent. So, oh my goodness, I noticed that 8 and 12 are both on the right side, and one's on the outside, or the top, and the other one's on the top. Well, if they're in the same location everywhere, we call that corresponding angles. Alright, so cool. That's your definition. I'm going to go ahead and stop there and let you use your notes to try and figure out angle 3 and 9. And then I think there's one more example on the back of your foldable. If not, and I'm a liar, raise your hand. Let us check your progress. If you have any questions, now is the time to ask. And if all is well, you have your homework. It is super fun and it fills out piece by piece. So I'm even so nice that I'm going to point out that you start with footlocker at angle 6. So what I like to do when I'm working problems like this, and it gives me something, is go to angle 6 and write footlocker. Actually label your picture. Alright guys, it has been great. This is the first day of all the vocabulary. This video will be up on YouTube forever and always. Check it out. And What now? You are on your way to geometric discoveries.